This video has been recorded during the COVID-19 virus as it just is beginning to peak in America. But here we are, sheltered in place. We have a nice fireplace going. And I thought I'd use the opportunity to, in this shorter video, to discuss why we study the Bible. And that's an important question, because liberal theologians today will say, well, this is allegorical, it's mythological, it's anecdotal, and it's written by men who lived, hundreds, thousands of years ago. What application is it to us today? So in this short video, I'd like to address some of those things. And in another video that follows, I'm going to talk to why we believe the Bible is true based upon empirical evidence. Now, I'm indebted to this illustration of what's called the three-legged stool by a man named Curtis Sargent, who was a missionary to Asia, to China. And he came back to the United States after having great success in spreading the gospel there to train Americans how to disciple. Now, what he calls the three-legged stool looks like this. You've got one leg, fairly long leg, representing knowledge. Now, evangelical Americans are very good, churches are, as far as imparting knowledge to the congregants. Sermon after sermon, Sunday school lesson after Sunday school lesson, a lot of biblical knowledge is imparted. But what should we be doing with that knowledge? And that gets into, we should be applying it. And you'll notice it's a shorter leg because many churches, many evangelical Christians, do not take that Bible knowledge and apply it. For example, I had a very dear friend of mine who's long since passed away, who had a master's in divinity, but due to his temper, he couldn't hold a job, and his marriage was in shambles, just because he had a lot of biblical knowledge, but applying that knowledge, taking up the cross daily, putting to death the flesh, wasn't there. Now, even a shorter leg is what's called passing it on. And that's where we should be making disciples. That's not done very well in America. They had a survey, George Barna's company, years ago, that discovered that only 1% of American pastors and evangelical leaders felt that their churches were doing a good job as far as discipleship. So, knowledge should come with application and should be linked with passing it on. Now, what happens if you don't have all legs of a three-legged stool equal? It totters. And that's what I believe in my observation after more than 40 years of ministry in various churches of all kinds, that yes, we're not doing a great job in America of discipleship and applying that biblical knowledge and passing it on. I'm going to pause the video here and bring up something which I call the three orthodoxies. Okay, now I've brought up the first slide, which is called Three Orthodoxies, and this is if everything goes right. What do I mean by orthodoxy? It's that which is true, that which is known to be accurate. Orthodox theology is sound theology based on sound biblical doctrine. Social ethics is the proper application of theology to social issues and ethics. And orthodox personal ethics is how everything links together with your personal life. So that includes, orthodox theology includes sound doctrine from the Bible, your biblical knowledge we talked about earlier, a love of God, and a desire for application. All of these things which we've talked about in the three-legged stool. Now that should carry over into how we apply it to the society at large, such as social justice. Take a look at things like sex trafficking, the injustice there, racial equality. Concern for the poor is always something that sound biblical doctrine, the Bible, talks about in the scriptures, and certainly Jesus had concern for the poor, and love for your fellow man. Now these two together should flow into orthodox personal ethics, which includes righteous living and conduct before man, personal evangelism, passing it on, good interpersonal relationships, being humble and poor in spirit, and a good testimony before others. Now, what could go wrong if you have unorthodox theology or unorthodox social ethics or unorthodox personal ethics? And we'll take a look at that slide next. So what could happen with unorthodox theology? You get into apostate teaching, which is false teaching. Denial of the faith in the Word of God. You could be puffed up with knowledge. That could feed in unorthodox social ethics, social injustice. You'd be a cause of a lot of the social problems in the world. Disregard of the poor, racial prejudice, and hatred of your fellow man. Those in turn would feed into your personal unorthodox ethics, such as being hypocritical, being a poor testimony before others, poor interpersonal relationships, like my friend, which I mentioned earlier, sinful conduct, judgmental attitude, lack of concern for the unsaved. All of these things can flow out of unorthodox theology. Once again, the purpose of this short video is just to highlight some of the things or reasons of why we should study the Scriptures. There's various other reasons which can be addressed also through surveys and sort of things, which I won't get into in this video. But again, it's very important to study the Bible daily, at least one chapter a day, and then look for how we can apply that Bible knowledge, not to puff up our heads with it, but to be able to apply it to our own personal lives, and then be able to pass it on into discipleship making. Thank you very much.